from people with,
Oi!
you know,
Lobbying as an anti-Semitic trope, yeah? That's what I've heard. Talking BDS. I'm turning into Australian. I don't know why I'm turning Australian. Once I said gammon, it was over. Gary! What you mean, Gary?
last week I shared that contained an emoji that has awful connotations. Unfortunately, I did not see the emoji. If I had, I would never, ever have shared it. The minute I was made aware, I quickly deleted the post and went on to make an apology. I would like, once again, to say I'm sorry, unreservedly, for the hurt and upset caused. It was a genuine mistake and oversight.
This is literally no different than people trying to stretch and saying that Hasan calls Jews inbred. Like, this is an anti-Semitic trope or some shit. Like, that's it. That's the length of this commentary. I call hogs inbred, and hogs, and pigs. There's nothing to do with their religion or ethnic background or identity.
But I should have been more diligent.
This was the understated sign-off from Saturday's FA Cup final.
For now, goodbye.
The final goodbye will be on Sunday. It was always intended to be his last match of the day, but now he won't be staying to present the FA Cup and World Cup next season as planned.
Ultimately, Gary Lineker didn't want to be constrained by the impartiality rule here have to abide by. On Gaza, he claims silence equated to complicity. But even he accepted he crossed the line with a post he insisted wasn't knowingly anti-Semitic, but was deleted. The apology wasn't enough to save him, ending his 3 decades on the BBC in scandal rather than celebration.
The BBC's Director General, Tim Davies, said, Gary has acknowledged the mistake he made. Accordingly, we have agreed he will step back from further presenting after this season. We want to thank him for the contribution he has made. The BBC turned the former England captain into an accomplished broadcaster and the face of football, handed the prime Premier League highlight slot in 1999 and eventually the BBC's biggest salary. But finding his voice politically in public became increasingly problematic and a lightning rod for the BBC's critics. They tried to rein him in, comparing the then Tory government's migration policies to the rhetoric of 1930s Germany led to a suspension. Solidarity from colleagues.
Yeah, he was right for that, by the way. And it's so funny because the Labour government that took its place, the Tory government's place, unironically channeled the spirit of 1939 when Kid Starver came out and said, we're becoming a nation of strangers.
Produced this unprecedented programme 2 years ago with no other voices. But the BBC climbed down. Lineker was allowed back and allowed to say as he pleased elsewhere. But the boundaries of acceptable commentary on the Israel-Hamas conflict were stretched to the limit. And for one of Lineker's former bosses, this isn't about denying him a social conscience, but offence that damages the BBC.
Of course, people can have the right to speak out, but you are representing all the licence fee payers who pay your salary. And it's very hard in those cases to take strongly political positions in which you are essentially disagreeing with half the people who support your salary. So that's...
Oh, I hate this impartiality bullshit. There is never this level of care, consideration, or attention for those who shit on Muslims or Palestinians as a whole, when Gary's sentiment itself wasn't even shitting on Jews anyway. Bullshit. Of course, it's expected from the BBC, though. They are horrible at this. You can say whatever the you want about the entire Arab world, the entire Muslim world, and not a peep. Your career is safe. But when you say enough is enough, I can't stand impartial against an ongoing genocide. And all of a sudden, they're like, this is a major problem.
That's why I think the BBC has to be impartial.
After being a fixture of football coverage, a television era is ending. Gary Lineker has a flourishing podcasting empire to focus on. Even freer to speak out beyond football. It won't be the BBC's problem anymore.
We begin this Sunday morning with increasing calls to investigate and possibly arrest Jim Comey after the former FBI director posted an image on social media suggesting a call to assassinate President Trump.
The BBC needs to go back to apolitically content like Jimmy Savile. Yeah. Yeah, back when the BBC was truly impartial, mate. Fucking hell.
What's up, Barry?
All right, we got Bernard on the docket. Oh yeah, here's Gary Lineker on Gaza. This is what he said on Mehdi Unfiltered.
It's the worst thing I've seen in my lifetime. I've seen so many images of children that, you know, I've got no skin in this game. You know, I'm not Muslim. I'm you know, not Jewish. I'm not Israeli. I'm not Palestinian.
Ooh, the way he said he's not Jewish. He put some stink on it. Let me read further into this. Yeah, he must be Hamas, dude. I'm joking, but like, low-key, that is what the level Israel defenders take it to.
So I see it, I think, purely from the outside, as from a neutral perspective. And I can't think of anything that I've seen worse in my lifetime. The constant images of children losing their lives day in, day out. Now, obviously, we all know what, you know, October 7th happened, and, you know, the Hamas thing. But the minute you raise your voice against what they're now doing there, you know, you get accused of being a supporter of Hamas, or, you know, all this kind of stuff. So there is, you know, there's a lot of heavy lobbying on people to be quiet. So I understand why most people refrain, but I'm getting on a bit now. I'm fairly secure, and I can't be silent about what's happening there. I think it's so full. And now they're talking about, you know, it already looks like it's happening, going into Rafah, where they've sent everybody down there. So, you know, I don't think you can be, you know, it's not anti-Semitic to say that what Israel is doing is wrong. And I just.
Excuse me. Yes, it is. It seems like you're engaging in Hamas propaganda, sir. To think Gary Lineker used to be an anti-Corbyn liberal. This is what I've heard as well. A lot of people are eating crow. There's nothing, like, in a weird way. Look, I'm not going to shit on him right now, but it is very interesting to think that, like, a big part of the reason why he was anti-Corbyn was because of what they're doing to him right now. Because the British press went after our boy Jezza, okay, the big Jezza, the GOAT, the man, the myth, the legend, in the most egregious ways possible, constantly branding him an arch anti-Semite. And the people that got their notes from that, the people that were just like utterly oblivious to why this was happening to him, and the reason why it was happening to Jeremy Corbyn was because of his positions on Israel, okay, make no mistake, are now coming to the recognition of the realities that Palestinians face that Jeremy Corbyn did know. And now he's knowledgeable as well. He's cursed with being equipped with the knowledge of what goes on. And when you're cursed with that knowledge, and you are even a little bit of a normal human being with a conscience, it is virtually impossible for you to not say anything. Just popping in to say I talked to Medea Benjamin and told her you always gas her up on stream. Now she wants to be a guest. Bro, Medea is such an infiltration specialist that she probably is in my house right now and I didn't even know. Okay? She's probably here right now. I don't even know. She's about to whip out a phone camera and start protesting. The queen does keep moving. It's true. She's probably behind the queen. She is the queen. I love Medea Benjamin. My goat.
Just can't see how everybody doesn't see it that way now. For, you know, whatever the cause, whatever started it, and we all know that, you know, the history of this area of the world goes way before October the 7th. But it's truly dreadful what's happening, and I cry on a regular basis when I see certain images on social media.
How dare you? How dare you have a conscience, dude?
Where I stand on this, I'm sorry, it's more important than what the BBC, what's going on there is, you know, the mass murder of thousands of children is probably something that we should have a little opinion on.
But the BBC as a whole needs to be impartial about it.
Why? It needs to be factual.
It needs to be impartial about a conflict, doesn't it? And it's hard.
Does it have to be? It wasn't impartial about Ukraine and Russia.
And you might say that
Why does it have to be impartial about... I understand if it's partial about our government and things in this country and everything
Great
like that.
take.
But something that's going on that far away? Why does it?
Because the Israeli position is that what is happening in Gaza, and by the way, I'm not here as an advocate of the Israeli government, but the Israeli position is that what is happening in Gaza is a response to the slaughter and capture of innocent Israelis on October the 7th. And
which was awful, which was truly awful.
And that full context needs to be there when discussing what's going on.
But that's not the full context, is it? Because the full context starts way before October the 7th, doesn't it?
It sounds like you think the BBC is in a complete mess on impartiality.
No, I don't think the BBC is in a mess. I think the BBC it's very difficult for the BBC. I think the BBC generally does a really good job of it, but it's not always easy. I think facts are the most important thing that they, it's like that old thing, isn't it? If it's raining outside, you don't need someone's opinion to say it's not raining.
Yep.
What you want to see is actually what is the weather outside. So I understand why it's so.
God damn, he butchered that worse than I do sometimes. Gary, fucking hell, Gary. Thought you was a top lad. Fuck you doing? Talking a big game about fucking Israel. Gary, thought you were a football guy. Stick to fucking football, Gary. Don't talk about fucking things you don't know about, Gary. I like my fucking BBC with impartiality. And by that I mean, they need to talk about the fucking scourge that these migrants coming on the fucking boats represent. Hold on, Gary. Impartial fucking means representing my position. Me, a fucking gammon. Bit of bollocks in it. Talking this or that about Israel.
So difficult for the BBC, and it really is. And I feel for the people at the top because, the amount of lobbying that will be going on and from people with,
lobbying. That's an anti-Semitic trope, yeah? That's what I've heard. Talking fucking BDS. I'm turning into Australian. I don't know why I'm turning Australian. Once I said gammon, it was over. Gary! What you fucking mean, Gary?
That aren't very impartial. Must be immense.
Knowing what you know now, which is that of that documentary...
As a child, yeah.
Is a child whose father is a Hamas official. And that wasn't disclosed to the public.
Bro, what difference does it make? The kid is like 12. That's insane. Like, the fact that this is even a point of contention is so crazy. And the dude, the kid that was the guy in the protagonist of the documentary, not only was he 12, but his father is not like fucking Abu Ubaida or some shit. Like, his dad is like a Palestinian minister guy. Like, he's in charge of government affairs. Like, yeah, they're saying the Hamas run child. We do not inherit the sins of our fathers. Okay, but like, there's no sin for his father either. Like, the minister of agriculture in Gaza is not committing to any sin. Their greatest sin is just being Palestinian. Okay, like, what sin did he contribute to? Yeah, he was doing the horrible job mismanaging crops. I mean, think about that. Exactly. Like, if he recognizes they're enduring a genocide, then resistance fighters are just not sinners. That guy's not even a resistance fighter. I'm not even talking about resistance fighters here. Like, you know what my position is. Like, it is perfectly valid for every single person that has the capacity to take up arms against Israel to engage in the lawful act of developing a spontaneous militia and to actively fucking shoot at and defend their homes from Israeli rocket fire and Israeli military positions inside of the Gaza Strip. Israel has no legal right as a belligerent occupier to invade the Gaza Strip, and Hamas, Islamic Jihad, or any number of different Palestinians that decide to understandably take up arms and fight against Israel have every right to do so. They have a moral obligation. They have a internationally, legally recognized obligation to fight against Israel's unjustifiable death and destruction campaign. Make no fucking mistake. Okay? This is not about October 7. Holy shit, I didn't know that Hamas was like the whole government and not just the resistance fighters. Oh my God. I mean, yes, I'm not going to make fun of you for not knowing that. Yes, Hamas has two different branches. You have the Al-Qassam brigades, I think it's like Al-Qassam I don't know the full name of it, but Al-Qassam brigades is the militant faction that engages in militant resistance against Israel. And Hamas, in and of itself, also has an interior ministry. It has civil governance, responsibilities of civil governance. Yes, is al-Din al-Qassam is the name of the militant group. Yeah. That boy's father, however, is not a part of the martyr is ad-Din al-Qassam brigades. That boy's father is just the fucking minister of agriculture. Okay? He just organizes crops. Obviously, from Israel's position, they're like, well, you want to maintain olive trees. That is Hamas. Olive trees, this is natural. If you want to defend the natural indigenous trees of Israel, then you are Hamas. We must kill you. The more you know, chatter, it's understandable, but yeah, it makes it so much worse. They essentially have a right to kill everyone in the government because Israel wants to destroy everything. Yeah, same with fucking Hezbollah too, though their civil wing is pretty unpopular for obvious reasons. Yes and no. Yes and no. Because their fucking civil wing is... I think saying the Hezbollah civil wing is unpopular is incorrect. It's unpopular because Lebanon, just like every other fucking country that is... I am Lebanese, by the way. Okay, then you know this better than anybody else. Lebanon, just like every other fucking country in the region, has basically been sectioned off into nation states that were carefully crafted and by design was always going to succumb to sectarian infighting. And of course, Hezbollah is the Shia Muslim faction in the country. And its inception actually is not born out of just resisting against Israel, but also born out of resisting against the Maronite Christian faction within the Lebanese government and all the shit that like the Shias had to endure. There's also like it's, you know, where does Syria end and Lebanon begin is another fucking point of contention. Syria also obviously has its own sectarian infighting. Part of it played a formative role in the Syrian civil war. So it fucking sucks. It sucks that these are maps that were designed for this kind of back and forth to take place. So yes, depending on who you ask, Hezbollah is either popular and awesome or very unpopular and not awesome. Having said that, however, obviously Israeli incursions into Lebanon do have a galvanizing factor in this equation. Just like with Ansar Allah, there are people from Yemen who have fled Yemen. And I say fled Yemen as in not just fled the famine in Yemen, but fled the Ansar Allah movement overtaking the government in Yemen, like Sunni Muslims in Yemen that left because they were worried that they might actually be victim to sectarian violence in Yemen, who now ride for the Houthis. And the reason for why they ride for the Houthis, in spite of sometimes directly engaging in battle with the Houthis, is because the Houthis are the only game in town that is actually trying to punish Israel for the crime of genocide. So like I said, Israel is seen by many parties in the region as an extension of American imperialism, at least knowledgeable parties like Hasan Nasrallah, who spoke to the matter in quite an apt fashion, and therefore resisting against the extension of American violence or Israeli violence directly, which will, of course, which of course over there is seen as Jewish violence. Make no mistake, they don't have the same careful analysis that we do for obvious reasons, because Israel doesn't fucking say that like we're separate from Judaism. They say they're doing this for Judaism, and so whenever people are resisting against Israel in the region, they get a tremendous amount of support. How exactly were the maps drawn to create sectarian infighting? I mean, people coalesced around certain population centers, but like it was definitely beneficial for countries like Lebanon and Syria to have numerous different ethnic groups or numerous different religious groups inside of one national boundary, so that they were constantly worried, they were constantly destabilized and could not find a unique national identity. One example I will give you is Turkey, right? The Ottoman Empire was destroyed by European colonial forces. They won. Even though the Ottoman Empire technically won its own battle and also did a genocide on the side, even though the Ottoman Empire won its own invasion forces and were able to successfully purge the Anzac forces, for example, from its ranks, at least in the areas that we now know as Turkey, right? Turkey, technically, as a nation state, was not actually occupied by any colonial power. There are very few countries on the planet that are not occupied by a colonial power, if you think about it. Like, there's actually a very tiny number. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, and therefore, Turkey has a position where, like, they were able to develop their own national identity. Iran is another one, yes. Japan is another one, nuked. Thailand is another one. Ethiopia is another one. But the point I was trying to make, no, someone said France. Dog, we're talking about countries that were not occupied by Western colonial powers. What do you mean, France? And yes, that is because the Turks were the colonial power under the Ottoman Empire. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this, is because Turkish citizenship does not, with the exception of violence that Alevis are subjected to, which is like a different Muslim sect, and the violence that Kurds are subjected to, Turks broadly do not see themselves as anything but Turks. Even the Alevis also see themselves as Turks ultimately, and even some Kurds will see themselves as both Kurdish and Turkish at the same time. And I think part of that is because that colonial occupation did not actually, that colonial occupation never actually took place inside of the Turkish nation state's boundaries. And therefore, there wasn't any room for this kind of like sectarian infighting. Like, there are Jews living in Istanbul. They are Turkish. They're Jewish, but they're also Turkish. Like, they don't see themselves as something separate. Osmanli Empire was not a nation state, nor was it all that Turkish. No, absolutely. You are literally talking to a person whose family fucking comes from, half of my family comes from Greece, and the other half of my family comes from otherwise Arab occupied areas, like Arab populated areas. Half of my family comes from the Greek side, and then the other half of my family comes from the southwestern side or southeastern side of Turkey, like near the border of Syria. So, but I don't say I'm Greek. I don't say I'm like Syrian or Arab. No, Arab occupied is not the right word. Sorry, I meant like comprised of Arabs. I accidentally said that. ESL. So Kilis, where there were a bunch of Arabs and Kurds, like ethnic Arabs and ethnic Kurds. So basically, the point I'm making is that, like, my national identity is still Turkish, in the same way that, like, someone might see themselves as someone might come from like a Irish background or English background or Germanic background, but when you are here, when you're living in the United States of America, especially over the course of like multiple generations, you're American. And I think while what do you call it? Like Lebanese people obviously have a national identity, there are still a lot of unresolved ethnic sectarian tensions in the country, and that is by design. I see that as a byproduct of colonial occupation. Yeah. People also don't realize how relatively recent 19th century nationalism is. I know. They also think nationalism just means like Nazi Germany. Nationalism movement or a like post-colonial movement was the reason why there are nation states. For many countries, it's like a post-World War II phenomena. Like Israel is not the only country that was developed in 1948 or became a country on its own, a nation state on its own in 1948. There are plenty of other countries that developed and became nation states even after Israel. So nationalism projects its ideology back in time, making it seem like it always was. Yeah. So that's what this is. That's there is this is a bloody endeavor in general. All right, let's see what Gary was saying, by the way.
Which amounts to a serious flaw in the view of the BBC. Would you still sign that letter?
Yes. 13-year-old child narrating. It's not been written by. It's been written by the people who produced the show.
But the BBC failed to do sufficient due diligence.
I don't believe they. I think they just capitulated to lobbying that they get a lot of lobbying.
And audiences didn't know something quite fundamental about the child, which is that he was the son of a Hamas official. Isn't that a problem?
I don't think so, no.
Like you're blowing this dude's mind right now. Like that statement holds a lot of power. It holds a lot of power. That moment of honesty, that moment of bravery, because you do incur penalties. Sometimes you can literally go to fucking prison in places like in places like the UK. But that right there is a moment of brutal honesty that I think is very enlightening for a lot of other people, where they go, wait a minute, why the fuck do I think the Minister of Agriculture, just because like he's a part of the Hamas Civil Governance Division, is like a bad dude, and that his son must be branded as like a Hamas child? Seeing this realization happen in real time by a brown British dude is additionally funny. It goes to show you how powerful social conditioning is. Because like, dude, they did I don't know where he's from originally or where his family is from originally, but like the same exact dynamic existed for whatever nationalist emancipatory movement that happened in the former fucking colony that your family came from. You know what I mean? Or I don't even know if he actually is making this realization. Making assumptions? Yes, dude, I'm making a very understandable assumption. It doesn't make him less British. Yeah, like I don't know if he's Indian or Pakistani or anything like that, but like it's an understandable assumption to make in this process. It doesn't make him less British at all, not even a little bit. Having said that, we're talking about like British, in the conversation that we're having a conversation about British colonialism and the way that the nefarious ways in which like British colonialism permeates this kind of legenda, which at a certain point would have impacted people from people that were maybe even a part of his family, okay, in India, many generations prior.
And so you would put the program back on iPlayer now?
100%. I think you let people make their own minds up. We're adults. We're allowed to see things like that. I mean, it's incredibly moving.
But the argument against it is that if you are addressing an issue like Gaza, doing it through the eyes of a child almost immediately puts you on the side of Palestinians who are suffering.
Well,
yeah, you got a problem with that? Like, you can just like come out and say that loudly and proudly as a bad thing? People need to check themselves. International peoples that had British culture forced upon them are more British than the Scottish Highland backwoods people or Northern Irish. Just ask them, lol. I don't think people should be riding that proudly about being British or more British than everybody else, okay? Let's have some decency here. It's like someone like myself being like, I'm more American than the fucking Hicks that occupied this land many generations ago. Like, that's not something to be proud of, okay? Let's not forget what we are saying here. I see the point that you are trying to make, against the British racists that claim that if you're brown, you're not a true Brit or whatever, but